Thank you so much for joining us today. I've got Rob with me, and we're going to be talking about all different types of ideas in the insurance world and tied to innovation. But before we dive into the questions that I've got for you, can you give everybody an introduction?
Sure thing. It's great to be with you, Emma. My name is Rob Galbraith. I'm the founder and CEO of Forestview Insights. I previously spent 25 years in the financial services industry, most of that on the insurance side, working with carriers both in underwriting and innovation positions.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me. And so, to give everybody an insight into our friendship, we had been connected on LinkedIn, and then I saw you speaking at the GIS event, and then made you be my real life friend. And but while you were speaking on that panel, you gave this analogy, which is immediately what made me want to sit down for an interview. And I'm not going to steal any of the glory of it, other than saying, can you share everybody or share the gate agent analogy with everybody and how that ties to the idea of innovation?
Yeah, absolutely, Emma. So, one of the themes kind of throughout my career has been a focus on innovation, whether I was formerly leading an innovation team or just working in a business area, right? Just trying to really move things forward. And with the rise of InsurTech, it's so exciting. I think the amount of possibilities that are out there are really endless and really exciting. I wrote a book on it called The End of Insurance as We Know It that came out in 2019. So, something that's always been fascinating to me. One of the struggles, I think, is that so often systems dictate processes rather than the other way around. So we love to think that, hey, we have a certain process to have workflow. It could be rating a policy. It could be taking a submission in, reviewing that as an underwriter. It could be a claims adjuster, you name it, right? We have lots of different processes. It could be paying an invoice. So most disciplines have workflows that they use, regardless of where you are in the company. And so to do your workflow, you usually use the system that's given to you. And it's if somebody asks you like, how could we improve the process? Usually you're limited to like how you would improve the current system. So I describe this as the gate agent problem, where if you've ever gone to the airport and you're talking to the gate agent and you want to know, what are my chances of getting that upgrade or getting on this jet if I'm flying standby, or where's my luggage, or how late are we going to be delayed, things like that. And you see the system that the gate agent uses. It's usually green screen. It's from the 1980s. They're having to use a bunch of tabs and function keys, and you're like, oh my god, how can you still use this system? Like, why would the airlines not give the gate agent a more modern interface? It's got graphical stuff, drop down menus, radio buttons, walks them through, makes it very, very easy to use, and will allow you and I, Emma, to be a halfway competent gate agent because we would just kind of follow the system prompts. And the challenge is for those gate agents, they know the system backwards and forwards. So they had to learn it over time and they've gotten really good at it. So if you ask them to improve it, it's very difficult for them to think beyond the current system. So they might give you an incremental idea of, oh, I wish this field was here, or I don't like having to input this information in three different places. It's the same data essentially. But it's really hard for them to totally reimagine a new process, a brand new system. And this is really challenging from an innovation standpoint because as a leader of innovation teams, where you're looking to invest limited resources, both in terms of money and time, you of course want to work with the subject matter experts to make sure that you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. But if they tell you, oh, everything's fine, like no changes needed, or I just need this, few cosmetic changes rather than radically rethinking what they do, it becomes very, very challenging to innovate in a meaningful way.
I'm like such a sucker for an analogy, but that's so true to the way that we think about how we can change and improve. So when we look at the idea of innovation too, even going back to what you were saying, kind of there's different flavors of it. And one of the things that you and I have talked through before is defensive and offensive innovation. So can you share your kind of definition, I would say, for both of those? And then talk through, what do you think the strategy for organizations should be finding the right balance between these two ideas?
Yeah, great question, Emma. So, first of all, I would make the point that innovation is a discipline. It's not just this fun brainstorming thing that we get to do as a team builder every 6 months. And I think that's just the impression that a lot of people have. Even if you have a chief innovation officer at your company, they don't necessarily have the same weight and power and influence that, say, a chief claims officer or chief underwriter might have. And so that's really the challenge. It's just trying to um, give that the same time and attention that you do, right? Your HR department, your finance department, your IT department, you name it. One of the reasons I think that is the case is because for most folks, they haven't seen the benefits of innovation, and it's a challenge because by definition, innovation is it's novel and not new. So it's not just like, oh, there's this new software program that does things better, faster, cheaper. I want to upgrade to that, but essentially do the same job, just easier, right? Better. It's by definition risky. It's unknown. It's this. It's the part that you're like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work or not, right? Like risk and failure is kind of an essential element when we talk about innovation. And that's very scary for many of us, right? It's like, I don't want to spend a bunch of time and money on something that may not work out. Particularly in the insurance industry, we tend to be risk adverse. So I make this distinction, as you mentioned, between offensive innovation and defensive innovation. Defensive innovation is, to me, process improvements. It's keeping up with the Joneses. It's the things that you need to do to stay relevant. And if you don't make these minimal investments in innovation, you are going to fall behind the competition. And quite frankly, this can still take a lot of time and a lot of money. They're not always small wins. So I think about all the core systems replacements and digital transformation journeys that many companies have been on over the past decade. That's fantastic and a necessary thing to invest in. But guess what? All of your competitors are essentially on the same journey you are. So at the end of the day, you've spent several years and several millions of dollars, and you're not necessarily any better off than most of your competitors that have followed suit. You're certainly better off than those that didn't, right, make that investment. And these programs are the ones that tend to give you the ROI. They tend to be a little bit more predictable, like where you can say, okay, we will get that return on our investment from doing it. So it could be very small, it could be very large, but it's something that you can, with a reasonable amount of confidence, say we are going to get the return on investment here. The offensive innovations are going to be those big swings that may or may not work out, right? So to use a baseball analogy, this is swinging for the home run, or you might hit a home run, or you might strike out, but you're not likely to hit a single or double, or just kind of move the base runners along to score runs. Like you're really trying to get a lot of points on the board very, very quickly. And so those are necessary as well to really separate yourselves and even build a competitive advantage, but they don't necessarily pay off. And so those are the ones that people are reluctant to invest in. But if you have a steady stream of defensive innovation efforts that you're investing in that are giving you that ROI, that should fund your offensive innovation efforts. So if you take that big swing and a few of them miss, you're no worse off, right? You're still kind of net positive. And if one of those hits, then you have that really outsized returns that, say, a venture capitalist is looking for. So it's important to invest in both and just have the right kind of portfolio mix, portfolio view for your organization to be doing a little bit of both.
Wonderful. So my last question for you is going to pull back to that experience that you talked about at the beginning, having been a budget holder and making some of these decisions in the past for your organization. So there's so much that people can dive into and the shiny objects that you can chase. And I guess what suggestions do you have for people from an information gathering standpoint on how to put together that approach and find ways to learn about all the changes that are happening?
Yeah, it's a great question, Emma. So, the first thing I would say is, there's so much technological advancement and innovation happening. It's important to educate yourself about that. A lot of vendors do a fantastic job, right? Because they realize that education is part of their sales process, that they just need to help people get up to speed on certain technologies, the benefits that they provide, how they work, et cetera. But I also think about things like blockchain, which are very exciting and innovative technologies, but I don't think have been fully harnessed yet because many people are trying to replicate existing technologies and using blockchain instead. So you might have an encrypted database and you're saying, well, let me put that on the blockchain instead. And you realize, well, actually, this is inferior to my existing use case. Why would I make this investment? And so I think it's important to say, hey, this is actually a new technology that's very fundamentally different than what you have before. So it doesn't necessarily allow you to do the same use cases, just better, faster, cheaper, right? But it should unlock brand new use cases that maybe you didn't think of before, didn't realize were feasible just because the technology didn't exist. So I think about founders like Uber, right, where they didn't necessarily create the technology first. They said, hey, this is the experience that I want to have as a customer. And then they went out and figured out, how do I create the technology to make that experience possible? And so I think that's really powerful. So yes, technology is being innovative, and it's important that you stay up to speed on that and what its potential is. But I also think it's important to think about the experiences that you want your customers to have, and then kind of reverse engineer the technology. And so having that balance between both is really, really important.
Thank you so much for joining me for the discussion today, Rob. And if you aren't already, make sure that you head over and follow him on LinkedIn. He's got podcasts and all sorts of other great information. But where else can people find you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me and connect. I love meeting folks. I am a co-host of the InsurTech Geek podcast, so I encourage folks to look on your podcasting platform, subscribe to that. And then I mentioned Forestview Insights, so we just kicked off with our first product, which is the Forestview newsletter. It comes out twice a week, and it's usually about a 10-minute read, and I try to highlight something that's a current trend that's happening today and project forward of how that might influence the future. And it's really meant to kind of contextualize a lot of the information that's out there, a lot of the buzzwords, to really help you think about it and really to drive conversation within your organization and stimulate kind of original thought. So hopefully it's, you can grab a coffee or whatever your favorite beverage is, just take 10 to 15 minutes out of your day, read through it, reflect on it, share it with others, and hopefully that spurs some innovative thoughts on your own.
Great. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day, everybody.
If you're looking for expert tips on how to get started with your transformation or looking to hone in on your approach, make sure that you subscribe to our channel to catch our weekly Digital Transformation Talk series, where we interview experts from around the world on how to make it happen.